Today our speaker is Steve Curley. He is the director for REDI here in town, and you're going on your third year, I believe, starting in March?
Yeah, I'm 2 years in this month. Yeah.
So it seems like you just started, but we are lucky to have him. He is responsible for bringing in new businesses to help our economy and also retaining businesses that we already have here. He does a great job. He has been in Central Oregon since 1985 and has really been focused on helping bring in new businesses and the economy, making it better here in Central Oregon.
So I did Toastmasters for 3 years, so I encourage anyone who is interested to do that. It was really helpful. It was a long time ago now, but it was a great program. So thank you for having me. This month is my 2-year anniversary with REDI, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. A number of you in the room I know well. Chris, my board president currently, so I better not screw up, is here today, and so I'm going to go over some numbers. Some of you will be very familiar with. And I'd like to start at the beginning just to talk about what REDI does a little bit for those who may not know. I know a lot of you do, so I'm going to try and go through that quickly. I have some other stats that I have written down that I'll just talk about at the end, and so we'll go through it. And if you have any questions at any time, just raise your hand. So I always like to start with our strategic plan, our vision and mission. We're here to create prosperity through community and business development so that Redmond is a great place to live and prosper. And we do that in we focus on 3 main areas in our strategic plan: business development, business environment, sustainable operations. In business development, that's more the move, companies moving here, companies starting here, companies growing and expanding here. The business environment focuses on the indirects like workforce, education, housing, land and policy, and then sustainable operations, making sure that REDI is healthy financially. And so those are the main areas of our plan. What I do every day, I was trying to think up a good analogy. So I know a number of you remember Lily Tomlin from the days of, what was it, Laugh-In? If you don't, I guess I'm dating myself. But do you remember she had this thing where she was like a switchboard operator? She's like plugging in, and she's like, one ring ding, 2 ring. So she's connecting people all the time, right? And she always has her ear to what's going on. Like, she knows everything because she's listening, whether she's supposed to or not in that scenario. But I sort of feel that way. I'm in a position where I know a lot about what's going on, and I feel like I'm making connections with businesses, with property owners, with the city, with different folks to basically get stuff done, get businesses where they need to go, whether they're here and they're expanding, whether they're looking to come to the area, whether they're working on a building project and they're trying to get through some different hurdles with the city, and land use planning and those kinds of things. So, and this talks a lot about that. We have a tax abatement that enterprise zone that I manage, work with pretty much all the traded sector companies that are growing and expanding or coming into the area. The city owns land that I help to market that is focused on job creation, work with the city on their policies and on planning to make sure that it fits well with economic development, helping companies site here. Infrastructure is a big issue, financing and incentives, workforce development, and child care expansion. So I'll talk a little bit more about some of those as I go through. We work with around 130 firms here in Redmond every year. Some of those I'm sure you're familiar with. And when we look at 10 years of done deals, these are the number of projects. And so you'll see that this work is kind of lumpy. Some years there's a lot going on. Some years there's not as much. You'll notice in the last few years there was a little less going on for a number of reasons around supply chain, interest rates, things that were affected by the pandemic and all that was going on there. So Our number of projects ranges from 2 to 10, so you probably can't see that. The number of jobs, again, very lumpy. We had a strong year in 2022 with a big project, but again, the last few years hasn't been quite as robust as some of those past years. The numbers there range from around 25 to almost 350. And then the capital investment, what money is being invested in Redmond. So you can see, again, lumpy, the numbers range from under 5 million to over 30 million in a year. So generally, the trend is going up, but we've had a few short years here recently. And then what's in the pipeline? So this is encouraging. So these are the number of projects that are in our pipeline, going from 28 to 33 over the last 5 years. So that pipeline continues to grow, which means that interest in Redmond continues to be strong. And that's, for a number of reasons. Within Central Oregon, we are in the middle of everything. So if you have a business and you're trying to service your business throughout Central Oregon, Redmond is the place to be to do that. A good example, Big O Bagels recently opened a production facility here in Redmond, and they service all their other Big O Bagel shops, around the region. How many of you are familiar with Ollie's Kitchen? A few of you. So you remember the Tate and Tate facility over on Indian Avenue? Well, the folks that own Newport Market bought that, and that's become their production facility for Newport Market, for the Oliver Lemons, thank you, in Terrebonne and in Sisters. And they also now have a grab and go. And I haven't been there yet, but I've heard the food is really good. So Redmond continues to be sort of in the middle of everything, and that works really well. So our pending projects is very strong. The number of jobs represented, you'll see it was going up. It went down in 2023 because we lost a project that would have been a significant aviation project that went to Ohio, because Ohio has millions of dollars to throw at a company. And this was actually one that was in the Bend Bulletin, one called Joby Aircraft, if you want to look it up. But we were courting them. They came out. They really liked the location. They're from Central California area on the coast. But Oregon just couldn't compete from an incentives perspective. And so those jobs, that's why 23 went down, because that project went away. But we have another project that's pushed it back up again that is moving forward, and another aviation aerospace. So hopefully that one will come to fruition over time here. And then the last piece is the capital investment. Again, you can see it's kind of lumpy, but right now there are several fairly large companies in our pipeline that would make our capital investment hit $1 billion. And of course, these don't all happen, right? These are in the pipeline, expected to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. Maybe 40% of them happen for various reasons. And so we track them all and we work with them all, but they don't all come to fruition. So on the spec development side of things, these are buildings that are for lease. So the vacancy rate, and I'll hit this in another slide here soon, for Redmond is 1.13%. So if you have a business and you want to go rent 20 or lease 2,500 square feet, this is very difficult to find right now. We don't have enough supply in that area. The good news is we've got 65,000 square feet planned, 36,000, almost 37,000 square feet under construction. The challenge is, as soon as those get going, someone comes in and leases them. There's a building, it's going to be 24,000 square feet. There's a pad over on Jack Pine Court, if you drive over there. And he hasn't, he's just basically got his site prepped, and I'm working with him. He's already got several people that want to lease that building, and he hasn't even started building it yet. That's how the demand is. So we we need more space. So anytime anybody wants to invest in building, you know, we encourage that. I'll just run through this really quickly. This is the vacancy rate. So you can see from 2015 how it's just continued to go down. The good news is in spite of interest rates, we are getting, you know, people who are building spec buildings, you know, buildings for lease. So that's good news. The interest rates have hindered projects for sure, but we still have some that are going forward.
So how do you define industrial vacancy?
So industrial is manufacturing and so it's not commercial office, it's not commercial retail, and obviously not residential. So it's a space where it could be warehouse, you know, but usually something's being built or manufactured there. And when I talk about traded sector, which is what we focus on, that means businesses that are located in Redmond, but they're selling outside the region or outside the state, which then the money from those sales comes into that company, new money into the community, then gets recirculated through the community. So the more traded sector, the more wealth we bring into the community as a whole, which helps support those retail and commercial and service type businesses. So the vacancy rate, again, it was 1.16 in the third quarter, and it was 1.13 in the fourth quarter. So it did go down from 1.16. I was quite amazed. When you look at the sectors that the projects are in right now, we have a fair amount of aviation aerospace, and working with a company right now, very excited about, they're in early stages. They're working on some federal grants that would be fairly significant, and they'd probably be a multiple site company, but this would be one of those sites. That's very exciting. If we can get that, if they can get the funding and get that moving forward, that'll be a very exciting project. Building products continues to be another strong area, as Redmond has. So if you look at the public sector side of things, there's about $500 million in new projects coming out of the ground in the next couple of years. When you look at the airport expansion, the city's doing the wetlands project to expand the wastewater, the police station or public safety building, the new library, the hospital is doing a $90 million cancer center expansion. I'm okay on time, right?
No, you're perfectly fine. I didn't turn my phone off. I didn't want to.
Okay. Oh, here comes the hook. So this area is growing, and Redmond, you know, those suppliers for a lot of those projects are coming here because they need to stage their goods and services that are going to go to build the airport and to build all these other projects. So that's bringing more sort of that construction type base into the area so they can be close to some of these projects. But the good news is we're really spread out when it comes to the different areas that are different types of businesses that we have here. When you look at move versus grow, I like to call it, we tend to be more on the grow side. So companies that are here looking for more space. Until recently, you know, Redmond has had much more space than Bend, so we have companies that can't grow in Bend, so they come here and they find land here and they expand here. That's changing a little bit with the dynamics in Bend over the last year. It's still pretty tight there, but I'm seeing a little bit more space in Bend becoming available. And then when you look at the pipeline by the number of jobs that are coming, you know, most of them are in that small to medium size, you know, 6 to 20 jobs per project, or 21 to 100 jobs per project. You know, that's sort of the sweet spot for Redmond. So before, I had some other stats I wanted to just kind of go over that I have written down here that I think would be interesting for you. So Redmond's official population is a little over 38,000. In 2040, which is what, 16 years, it's expected to be over 54,000 residents. So last year last fiscal between July 1, 2022 and July 1, 2023, we grew by just under 1,000 residents. And the median house price from December 22 to December 23 went from $425 to $510, which is a 20% increase in 1 year. And it's funny, you know, we live here and I think we get in a bubble and we think, gosh, it's going to stop. It can't go anymore. It can't go anymore. It's not true. It will continue to rise as long as we have the supply and demand curve that we have, and we have people that want to continue to move to the area. And a good example of that, well, Bend is a good example of that, right? Because they're, I don't know what the median housing price there is off the top of my head.
About $886.
886. So, what about 5-10 years ago? They were probably where Redmond is, right? Yeah, probably not even 10 years ago. And you look at Boulder, Colorado, which also has a similar situation where there's no place to build. In fact, you can't build a house in Boulder, Colorado. You have to build in one of the outlying communities, and the prices there are way higher than Bend. So it can and will continue to go up as long as the supply and demand stays the way it is. Yeah.
I work in the profession, and those statistics can be very weird, though, based on the product being built. Home prices have gone down since COVID, across the board. So median home prices are a reflection of what's being built in the area and what's selling. First-time home buyers and those have been priced out because of interest rates, but prices almost across the board since COVID have gone down.
Well, this is the Beacon report, which is based on sales.
But you have to look at the products that are selling. People that have money and cash from other sales, there's more sale volume there, but even those are selling for less than they were 2 years ago. It's just that the entry-level home buyer has been wiped out, so we don't see a lot of the $400,000 sales, even though those are still existing. And I mean, I can show you over and over again, CMAs I did 2 years ago and now, they're all lower now than they were 2 years ago.
Interesting. Okay.
Everyone. 100%.
Yeah. So you're looking at the spectrum, this is just the median.
Spectrum. I'm looking at like $2 million homes. I'm looking at $400,000 homes. I'm looking at $700,000. Now the market has shifted in how many sell at the higher range because of people being pinched out at lower interest rates. But prices, statistics like that can be very skewed and look weird, and prices have gone down in the last 2 years.
That's sort of good colored commentary around that.
Now the cost of owning those homes has gone up because interest rates have doubled. And that's part of what you see in that median home price thing looking a little bit different than the reality on the ground.
Yeah. Yes.
So I'm sort of a simple math kind of guy. I see this growth and increase in population, more businesses, but yet our school board is considering closing one of the high schools.
Yes.
Doesn't add up in my simple math.
The answers are RPA.
So I want to hear what he has to say. No.
Okay. So this is in that secondary area, and I actually have been on that group that's reviewing it, the commission or whatever. So yeah, they went into that. That wasn't an option, and then they came back with that option. Well, in talking to Sharan, who's the expert on this, the school superintendent, because I asked him that very question, like, how can the population be growing so much? And it's, I mean, they go back over 5 years, and the kids aren't growing. So there's a number of reasons for that. One is people aren't having as many kids these days as they used to, which is a problem from an economic development standpoint, because if you don't have people, you can't have an economy. Homeschooling has also increased, and charter schools and things like that. So there are alternatives. RPA is another alternative, and so their projections. And he's not just looking at Redmond. He's looking at state and national. Is that while the population is going to grow, the number of students isn't going to grow, or isn't going to grow significantly. You want my personal opinion? Redmond High School is in bad shape.
Yeah.
And my personal opinion is the most efficient thing to do would be to move those students to Ridgeview, fix that school, use it for alternative uses, and if they're wrong about their projections, then they can turn that back into a regular high school and move all their other programs out. So it becomes a fallback. That's just my opinion. Chris.
See, since we're out here at Juniper, I mean, there's a lot of potential development out this way. I mean, 19th Street, large lot industrial. You want to talk on any of that?
Yeah, thank you for that. So we have 750 acres that I'm looking at out the window here that's owned by the state to be sold for the proceeds to go to the Common School Fund. Those are large lots, so the first sale, because of the way it was set up, has to be 200 acres. And then, subsequently, they can be 50-acre sites. Those are still pretty big sites. One of the biggest challenges with getting that land sold is getting the infrastructure built. Sewer, water, power, for the needs to serve that. We actually had a potential user that was in contract on the 200 acres that stepped away from that. Part of that was transportation costs and what it would take to mitigate that and to, with ODOT, when you put a development in, you have to pay for transportation costs, additional transportation costs, if you're going to burden the system. And so what the city is doing, which I think is great, is they are going to master plan that. They're going to invest money to master plan that and create some certainty around the cost for a potential user coming in to buy and develop that land. So, this is being recorded. I don't think the state is really an expert on land development. They own land and they want to sell the land, but you can't just sell a raw piece of land if you can't serve that land with utilities and infrastructure. So the city is saying, okay, we'll help you. We're going to, as long as you will agree to this, and so far so good, we'll master plan this. We'll create some certainty so that we can help you sell it and also help create jobs for the future of Redmond. So some really good things. Yes, Alan.
So I picked up my phone this morning and it said REDI board meeting 7:30. I don't know why it keeps telling me that because it's been 8 years since I've been to one of those meetings. But
You should decline that.
I did. So talk about your board. Do you have the right people at the table? Are they?
Yeah.
How's it going?
Thank you. I don't get that question very often. So board development is really important. We had an executive committee meeting yesterday, and that was one of our talking points. Is we want to make sure that we have strong board members. We want good representation from the traded sector, which we have. We have someone from BASX. We have someone from Medline. We have someone from a company called Algify, which is a digital marketing company that works worldwide. We've got Sunwest Builders. We've got Chris and a couple Edward Jones folks. We've got an employment professional. We have a very diverse board. Someone from COCC. I could go on and on. I feel like, and Mary's my assistant. I've told Mary this. I feel like we have the strongest board we've had in a long time. Now, I've only been there 2 years, but just knowing some of the history, I feel like we have a really strong board. We do have coming up a couple openings, and so we are looking for some board members that would, fit in and align with our mission, specifically traded sector. Those elections come up middle of the year for the next fiscal. That's why we're having the conversation now, so we can kind of prep and, if there's folks that are interested in being on the board. But I feel like we have a strong board right now, Alan. Yes.
A couple questions. The first one's a simple one, but the other one's kind of broad. First, initially, any changes going on at the Redmond Airport under your coverage?
When you say changes, so they're
growth
doing,
of the airport?
yes. So they're The number is actually their $155 million expansion. They're going to be putting in to the south jet bridges, the second story jet bridges, expanding the luggage capacity. It's a huge project. So that is in design. I'm not sure, they might break ground later this year on that, summer. So, and then also, so a lot interesting fact is that the airport owns a fair amount of industrial land right around here, and they can't sell it because of FAA rules. It's actually city-owned, city/airport. So what they do is they do long-term ground leases on that. And we have a chips company that is hoping to get federal CHIPS Act funding. They've gotten money from the state, from the legislature here from last year. And I believe they just received another grant that will help with some infrastructure that is looking at the airport to build their facility. So it'll be the first, I mean, BaseX is, you could consider them a semiconductor company a little bit because they use semiconductors, but they're going to be manufacturing components for semiconductors. We're hoping that, and this will be a significant investment, that they'll be sort of the first flag in the ground for semiconductor, and we can attract more of those companies, and specifically on this larger lot property to the south. So that's a very interesting project that's got a lot of momentum right now. John?
Okay, the other question was in these earlier charts and graphs, how does Redmond compare to the rest of the towns in Central Oregon?
We rock.
Yeah, we were. So when you look at, yeah, I didn't bring the regional numbers, but we do rock. Prineville has more capital investment because of Meta and Apple, right? Because they've invested, billions of dollars probably out there over the last 15 years in those facilities. But Redmond has stronger job numbers, more projects. Bend, we're actually a little ahead of Bend. Bend is really has a strong entrepreneurial focus, so they have a lot of startups and a lot of companies that are a little more tech-based, but more sort of in that startup area. They have a lot of food and beverage companies. That's a very strong sector in Bend, as well as the outdoor industry. We have a little bit of that spilling over here into Redmond, but they, right now they focus on a lot of the early stage projects. And and Bend has biotech, so Saran, pardon? Lonza, sort of the spin-outs of Bend Research, and of course the acquisition of Bend Research. So there are a few larger projects coming out of the ground in biotech there, but that's, there's a hub of biotech right on the north end of Bend there.
So as other businesses, say from somewhere else in the United States, want to locate in Oregon and they look at Central Oregon, Redmond's a good focus point, right?
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah, and you see, it's interesting. Wages are higher here, and land is higher here, and everything's higher here. But yet we continue to attract. So that it's interesting. So you look at a company like BaseX, and they were acquired a few years ago by a company called Aon. So they have operations in their headquarters is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They have operations in Kansas City, Kansas, and in Longview, Texas. And they have operations here. And when that happened, the thought was, well, gosh, they're just going to pull everybody. It's a lot cheaper to do business in Texas than it is in Redmond, Oregon. And what they have done is they have kept their engineers and their sort of higher paying folks here that fit better here. And they've integrated in really well with the other parts of that company. And they even hired one of the former founders to be their COO and president of Aon. So the president of Aon is now here. So that shows, people that come here stay here because they want to live here. So you have less churn. They are getting paid more, but those are usually the types of jobs, and those are the ones that we're trying to recruit that do pay more, so people can't live here. So I don't know, did that answer the question?
Great.
And if you keep their wife happy, they won't leave.
Right. Exactly.
Kind of go back to that master plan that you talked about with the city. If this was fully developed over here, all these large acre parcels were filled, just imagine the amount of traffic
Yeah.
and people over here, which could be good. in
So
some
you're
areas.
driving by your new building
Yeah,
every day.
yeah. Does that master plan include anything with a reroute finish or
Yes.
gate traffic? Okay.
So I can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how many jobs, so in doing a master plan, you have to estimate how many jobs are going to be, right? Because you need to know how many people, how much traffic, how much wastewater, all that. So the broad brush at this point is 6,000 to 9,000 jobs on the 750 acres, right? So the plan is, and the city has been working on this for about a year now, is creating sort of an east side bypass that would start likely at an interchange at where McVeigh would hit 97. They've talked about it being at Quarry, which is a little further south, but it really doesn't need to go that far south. So there'd be an interchange there. You'd go west to go connect with Helmholtz and go up into the residential. You'd go right to come up through this new industrial area to the fairgrounds, to the airport, and to the other industrial lands just north of there. We all know that the fairgrounds could use a little better access when you've got 30 or 40,000 people on the property. So in order for that to happen, it has to get on the city's transportation plan, the county's transportation plan, the state's transportation plan. So I think they're almost there, getting it on all those transportation plans, and then prioritizing, finding the funding. The city has approved $33 million to create a part of that, which will, as you're going north on Airport Way, just past the solar field, you'll go left. It'll curve left and come around to a roundabout at sort of Airport Veterans there, and then we'll continue north as a new 9th Street to Highway 126, which will be another new roundabout, and then 9th Street will go all the way up to Maple. As it does now, it'll be widened to be 3 lanes with a center turn lane, and then eventually from Maple, they want to connect that up to Highway 97 again, like near O'Neill Junction, or somewhere in that area. That's probably the last step. What the city is working on in the next couple of years is that part from Maple down to Airport Way to where the solar field is, where you're kind of cut over there.
So I mean, that sounds great, but not like a Highway 97 continuation.
No, they years ago they talked about that. They talked about going around the east side of the airport. Ellen can probably talk more about this than me. But it just wasn't feasible at that time, and so at this point, that is probably the best way to sort of disperse traffic so not everybody is stuck on Highway 97 running down the middle of Redmond. Amber.
I just want to remind you to talk about the luncheon.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Now Andy gets a hug. So REDI has our annual luncheon coming up on April 11th, right? I want to make sure I have the right number, the right date. We're very excited. We're at the fairgrounds. Last year we had about 250 people. We're going to try and get 400. We have a gentleman coming named Steve Brown. He was here 5 years ago. He's a futurist, but he focuses on AI, artificial intelligence, and he's going to talk about how businesses are using artificial intelligence today and how, our local businesses can use it. He's been in London for the last 2 years working for Google on their new AI technology, so he is up to date on everything that's happening in that field. He's an excellent speaker. Best part, he's got a British accent, so he's really fun to listen to. So please, you can go to REDI website, and the Eventbrite link is there if you want to get your tickets. We just got that set up here in the last week, so we're ready to go on that. Ron.
Yeah, Steve, you mentioned before we lost out on a big case, if you will, that was in development to California.
To Ohio.
Ohio?
Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned kind of as a sidebar that had something to do with authority and its ability to be competitive with what incentives are coming through other states.
Right.
What does that mean? We're now willing to
That means
state-
that like the Ohio State Legislature and the governor were willing to put $3 or $4 million, just give the company $3 or $4 million to come move there. That doesn't happen in Oregon.
And it did with, back in the day when we had super enterprise zones and different things, but we don't really have.
Our
any of
tools are
that.
limited. Yeah, we have tax abatement through the enterprise zones, but they're.
Because that's kind of how Facebook and Apple ended up out in Prineville, right?
Right, and yeah, and they're just coming to the end of their 15-year enterprise zone, so they're supposed to come back on the books here in the next few years, and they're paused at the moment, but they're going to continue growing. I think they ran out of land, so they're trying to work where's the next land, and then they're going to keep growing there.
Well, that cuts us off from those kinds of.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to understand Ohio's not, so they're throwing everything.
Thank you.
Steve,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you
Thank
very
you.
much for
Yeah.
your,
Iowa.
this is a smart. And if Mark's gonna take little pictures to put you on Facebook, if that's okay? Thank you very much. So guys, before we go, I want to say thank you for everybody who's in the room. Thank you. Everybody was in the room by 12:05 today, which maximized our time with Steve, and so thank you for being here. For that time. As you guys know, I always like to do a quote at the end, and this is for our dear friend John, and I hope this lands properly. John, as you guys know, I looked at a life well lived, and as you guys know, service, honor, integrity, all of those things. And of course, John was all of those things, but I think he was something more. Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid and broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride." Thank you, John.